And we want to take a good portion of time because after we had part one, people asked if we could call him back.
Yes.
And Mr. Fuller graciously accepted to participate in this interview today.
Right.
And so, Mr. Fuller, we want to thank you very much for coming on to talk about your work and how your analysis would help us understand and move forward or move from the space that we're in with the South Carolina massacre. Mr. Fuller, welcome to our Mix What I Like.
Yes, sir. Thank you for inviting me.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Absolutely.
So what are your initial thoughts, and if you want to lay out your ideas related to this young white male walking into a Bible study moment in a church, specifically African Methodist Episcopal, specifically in South Carolina, specifically in Charleston? What are your thoughts about this incident?
Well, I'll say what I always say. We're in a system of government, world government, not just a particular place, other than the entire planet. We have a world government, and the correct title for that government is, in my opinion, based on logic, the system of white supremacy. That's the world government. There is no other government on the planet. Now, there are people who will say, oh, no, that can't be true. I mean, but I'm saying I haven't seen anything that proves otherwise. No evidence at all. None. In all the years I've been on the planet, when I've taken an interest in the subject of how is the planet being run, by whom, who has the last and first words that are of any importance in any area of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, and counter-war, people who are for war and people who are against war. Who has the most say-so and who has the most muscle? That's when you figure out who is the government of the planet, by answering those questions. Who tells everybody else what to do, when to do it, how to do it, what they better not do, or else, etc., etc., etc. In all of those areas of activity that I just named, I call them the 9 major areas of activity. That just about covers everything that anybody is doing anywhere on the planet at any given time. So, since I use the term white supremacy, which is racism, there is no potent form of racism other than white supremacy. When you say racism, you mean white supremacy. There is no other form of racism that counts. Some people might walk around calling themselves racist who are not white supremacists, but they don't have any proof of it. Racism means you got some power. I mean, you're not just walking around talking and trying to impress somebody with some words. Racists have power. Otherwise, racism doesn't exist. You have to be able to express racism in something else other than words. You have to back up your racism, which means what? Mistreating people based on color, and nobody knows how to stop it. Now, the white supremacists are the only people who know how to do that, and who have proven it over and over again. Not all white people, but those white people who believe in dominating and mistreating people who have color in their skin. That's what a white supremacist is. These people, when they talk, they back up their talk with action. They are the only people who are able to do that and who prove that they are able. There might be some people I've heard, every now and then I've heard that there are some people somewhere on the planet who fancy themselves as being black supremacists, but there's no evidence that they're supreme over anything, because when the white supremacists show up, they hop. So that goes to show you who's supreme. So, getting back to the answer, direct answer to the question, what I have written in my book is the incident that happened with the person that walked into the church and killed those people who were in the church other day. That's to be expected. Why? Because we're in a world government of white supremacy. And it's enforced every day all over the planet, whether it's in what we call South Carolina, or Los Angeles, or Alabama, or the Congo, or Haiti, or Zimbabwe, or South Africa, or Brazil. Wherever you find people of color, you find the white supremacists dominating and mistreating in all of the areas of activity, not just in some, in all the 9 areas that I just mentioned, and all of the evidence, if anybody just pays attention to evidence, proves it. I don't know of any place on the planet where that's not true. And if there is such a place, just because Neely Fuller is talking, that doesn't mean that he knows what he's talking about. But if somebody can just tell Neely Fuller, hey, he's got it all wrong, and he's on the radio telling people something that's false, please call in on this show or call me anywhere and let me know where that place is.
Because we be moving real quick.
Where the white supremacists, right, do not dominate non-white people any inch of this planet.
Let me just remind folks that is the voice of Professor Neely Fuller. And you are listening to I Mix What I Like here at WPFW 89.3 FM. I'm Jared Ball. Dr. Hate's in the building. We got the brother Alexander Pushkin with us, and brother Mike is running the boards, making sure things sound as they're supposed to. You know, Professor Fuller, when people hear this conversation and discussions of white supremacy come up, I know there's a tendency, I'm in part admittedly drawn to it, but I want to hear your response to this tendency to relate these responses or this idea of white supremacy to a material base. In other words, that this argument that racism only exists because capitalism exists, or racism is an excuse or justification for the material land grabs, etc., from African and by extension all so-called colored people. How do you react to that, or what is your response to that, or what does your research tell you about the origins of this thing you've defined as a world system of white supremacy?
Oh, I really don't know the origins. I always tell people that you have to consult historians about the exact moment that some person, presumably a white person, I guess, the exact moment that a white person, a person who is classified as white, got the idea that the entire world should be run on the basis of a government that would be based on the process of looking at a person's color as a white person, looking at a person that is not white, and say in your own mind, and to other people, including the person that you're pointing out who has color in his or her skin, you are eligible to be dominated and mistreated by anybody who is classified as white. Any time of day or night that you are encountered anywhere on this planet called Earth, and in the future, anywhere on any other planet where we happen to cross paths, that if I am a person classified as white, I not only have the privilege, but I have the duty to dominate and mistreat you if you have color in your skin, and do this 24 hours a day. You're under my command if I am a person classified as white. And I'm going to be a royal person, and in royal philosophy, there's an old slogan, the king can do no wrong. In other words, by me being white, I'm always right. And even when you are right, you are wrong if I say you're wrong.
Right.
Yeah, see, because white is right.
So, am I right in summarizing that as, I think this is where I am too at this point, that it really doesn't matter. Those origins are almost, I wouldn't say maybe don't matter, but they're secondarily relevant to what is in fact going on right now. in terms of that question of the origins of this white supremacist.
That's what I mean. Somebody got the idea. Some people said it was 400 years ago. Some people say, oh, no, it's 600 at least.
Right.
And then there are some scholars, who say over and over again, but their voices are not heard from for the most part. They say that this has been going on for something like 2,000 years. Mm-hmm. It goes back to the time of Jesus, and maybe prior to that. They say that, oh yes, this color thing has always been on the burner. And so that makes it a pretty long-running show.
So
it's deeply ingrained.
I gave my interpretation of what was attributed to this killer in terms of his comment about not being able to stop shooting when when it was requested of him that he please stop shooting. He said, "I can't." It was reported at least that he said, "I can't. I have to do this." How do you interpret his comment there?
Well, it goes with the entire culture of white supremacy. See, when everybody on the planet has been taught, you mistreat people. You're supposed to mistreat people who have color in their skin. It seems like even among black people, we can't seem to get that in our heads except when we act out, because we mistreat each other on a grand scale. We look forward to it. We have gangs that grow up in neighborhoods where that's all we look forward to in our entire existence. Everything that we plan on is go and hunt down some other non-white people, anybody who looks like us, as near to us as they possibly can be, and kill them. And then just stand there with an empty gun and say, well, I did what I was born to do. Is anybody else that I can kill, that looks like me? We actually have that mentality. And where did we get it? From the white supremacists. Because they teach everybody in the world that this is what everybody's supposed to be doing. And even black people, we see it every day. We see it in the newspapers. We see it in every city, in every town. And we don't seem to get it. We have one government on the entire planet with one mission, and that is to dominate and mistreat people of color 24 hours a day. And that's what everything is about. That's what going to school is about. That's what entertainment is supposed to be about, all the movies and whatnot. That's what language is supposed to be about. Just look at what, even among us black people, we refer to the incident in the church as a dark day. It wasn't any dark day. Why do we call it a dark day? We even refer to everything as dark. You say, I'm in a dark mood. Has anybody ever photographed a mood? Even in the language, the English language, everything associated with darkness. Darkness is something you get rid of. And this is not true, because darkness complements light. You have to have light and darkness, according to compensatory logic, or just what you call just whatever logic you want to use. In order to have light, you have to have darkness. They complement each other. They're supposed to work in harmony with each other. You have night and you have day. 9/11 is referred to as one of the darkest moments in history. It was a dark day in New York City. It wasn't any dark day. If it had been a dark day, those planes would have wound up in the Atlantic Ocean. Because they wouldn't be able to find the towers, maybe.
I thought he was going to say someplace else, but
yeah, it would be interesting because we don't have a day that's not dark in black history under this white supremacist government. So where were you going?
Yes, but see,
I wasn't going to go anywhere. What I really just wanted to
yes, sir.
I wasn't going to go anywhere that would be appropriate for us remaining on the air. What I will say is that Dr. Haight had another comment or question for you, Mr. Fuller, and then we do want to let folks know, since community comment is being adjusted today, since Dr. Haight is not hosting community comment today, we're going to do a special session, a short mini session of that here at I Mix What I Like, and open up the phones in just a minute for very short, brief comments or questions for our guests. So 202-588 0893. Okay, I forgot, got a pledge drive mode. 588-0893 if you want to get on the phones and join this conversation with a very quick and brief comment or question. But yeah, go ahead. I think you had a.
Mr. Fuller, when you laid out the 9 areas of people activity, the power in covering that kind of breadth is seen when you look at all of the different ways that this killer, murderer, massacreist, terrorist, thug try to say what he had to do, right?
Yes.
And he included sex in it.
Absolutely.
It had a religious dimension to it.
Absolutely.
It had work and labor in it, like you're taking our jobs and you're taking over this country with politics and recognizing the laws and how he would be able to move out of that space. And, I can't imagine a situation where he doesn't get convicted, right? But I have to go to that moment that once again we are relying and waiting on a system that endorses white supremacy to now hold a white supremacist guilty for acting out on his white supremacy. And it really I keep struggling with this idea of where do black folk go? What does justice look like for black folk? What resets this playing field so that black folks can live in a space according to what we consider relevant, our laws, our worldview, our needs, without being killed by white supremacists?
You're directing that as a question to me?
Yeah, I just want you to hate on this guy a little bit more, Bobby Fuller, if you can.
Well, no, that's what I have written in the textbook for victims of white supremacy is that we're supposed to be replacing that system with a better system. Now, what would be a better system than the system of white supremacy? Because you can accomplish material things through a system of white supremacy, because fundamentally it's just a system of slavery. That's all it is. Racism is slavery. Anytime somebody's mistreating someone for their benefit, the person that's being mistreated is a slave. It's just that simple. Slavery doesn't end when a person is being mistreated and nobody's stopping the mistreatment. The mistreated person is a slave, and the person doing the mistreating is a slave master. That's in any setting, regardless of what name you give to it. It's basically slavery. All right, mistreatment is slavery if you don't put a stop to it. Okay, so therefore, we need a better system than this system that we have. What would that system be? So if you got a system of mistreatment, you want a system that's not of mistreatment. That would be justice. We never gave a legal definition to the word justice. I didn't find that out until 1994. I thought that there was some kind of legal definition for the word justice. But I asked a lawyer about it, and he said, well, justice is whatever the Supreme Court says that it is. Well, now, Supreme Court, is that arbitrary? Because there are a lot of so-called Supreme Courts all over the world. So no wonder we can't get out.
Let me just cut this off with.
Yes.
When you said Supreme Court, I just heard you saying white Supreme Court.
Well, yes. I mean, the only actual Supreme Court, not 9 justices that we call the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is the entire system of white supremacy. That's the Supreme Court for the entire world. Why? Because that's what white supremacy is. They govern the laws. You know, when you say court, you're talking about law. Now, what is law? Law is whatever is done. And what is done every day, everywhere on the planet, is that people are being mistreated on the basis of color. So that's your Supreme Court on this planet. We have a planetary Supreme Court. And who are the people that run that court? Every white person, including the 21-year-old white male, white man that walked into the church, is a part of that Supreme Court by his own announcement. You know, I came in here to kill some non-white people, some black people. Why? Because I'm dissatisfied with their conduct, with their behavior. And however, it's kind of a contradiction, I might say, in my opinion, according to logic, that he's getting mad at them for what they are doing. Those people that were in that church, we are a product of the system of white supremacy. Whatever you see black people doing, whether sitting in church, in what we call a black church, historically black church, there's a reason for it being called a black church. It's a reaction to the system of white supremacy. That's what every black church is. That's why it's called a black church. It's a reaction to the system of white supremacy. Otherwise, it would just be called a Christian church. No, African Methodist, that's a special title. So, but that's a result of the system of white supremacy. So here you have a white person going in there saying, I'm going to disrupt what you're doing by killing you for being in here, when it was the white supremacists who made that church possible. Otherwise, it would be just another church. All Christian churches is what they would be called. And nobody would know the difference between a black church and a white church. So see, you have lots of contradictions in the system of white supremacy. Actually, if that young white man wanted to be angry with somebody, he should be angry with the white people who are around him, because they are the ones who invented the system and the way that it's working, because it's working very well. It's just being refined. But I don't know what he's angry about. Everything is set up to help him.
So, Professor,
so if he has a gripe, it can't be with black people. Black people don't take over anything.
So, Professor Fuller, let's go ahead and let people know again that they're listening to I Mix What I Like here at WPFW 89.3 FM. And in the last 10 minutes we have on this program here with Dr. Haight and Alexander Pushkin, and of course Neely Fuller, our special guest. We want to let a couple of callers get in here, and we're going to have to remind you again, heavy community comment rules apply. 60 seconds or less, please, so we can get through a few of these and have a special a moment here. But caller, you're on the air with WPFW, and I Mix What I Like. Good morning.
Good morning, my brother.
Good morning.
The idea of supremacy itself is what we should fight. The only supreme being is God. There is no human being that is supreme. And like the professor said, as the gangs here kill another black person, the dictators installed by white supremacists are killing Africans. In Ethiopia, the dictators are killing, like they beheaded.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on. Thank you, Brother Tesfu. Let's grab another caller real quick here at WPFW. Good morning. Please turn down your radios as you listen. Caller, you're on the air. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, hi. My name is Joan from Washington, D.C., and I feel as sisters and brothers, Pan-African as well as African-American, need to have a discussion about what is whiteness, where did melanin recessiveness come from, and the sister author historian Nell Irvin Painter, who wrote the book The History of White People, I'm not sure if you've discussed that on your show, is a must-read because she recounts the history very thoroughly of how this caste system, whiteness, develops. Because we need to redefine ourselves and not define ourselves in reaction to a people who try to dominate, but we need to understand the history of this caste system, which is what it is, that goes by lineage and skin color.
So that's an excellent point.
Yep.
And Nell Irvin Painter was just on the margin yesterday. For folks want to check that out,
really?
They can go to WPFW.org.
We've talked about Grace Elizabeth Hale's work that I think I'm more familiar with, The Making of Whiteness, and also we've definitely talked about oh my goodness, his name just slipped my mind. I'm gonna come back to him though. But
is he a white guy?
Nah, he's a brother. Talks a legendary cat, Oliver Cox. We've talked about him as Oliver Cox, who's talked about this development of caste and class and whiteness as well. Professor Fuller, do you have any particular responses to those last comments or anything that the last two callers raised?
Well, I understand. If I understand what one of the persons said, they said that only God is supreme. Was that correct?
That was one of the comments, yes.
Yes. And the white supremacists themselves, the ones that I've listened to all down through the years, they have said that God is supreme. But one of the white supremacists, and this is the one that stands out to me, back in the 1960s, he explained that. He said, oh, sure, God is over all people, regardless of what color they are, and over all animals and all creatures. I mean, everybody should understand that. But then he said something else. He said, God assigned white people to dominate black people. That's what he said. All right? He said, oh, yes, we all have a God, but God assigned white people to be over black people. And if everybody would just shut up and let it alone, everybody will prosper like they ought to.
Folks,
now, see, so that is a part of the white supremacist package. Oh, yeah, the white supremacists do not deny the existence of God, but they say God assigned them to tell black people what to do. See, and that is a problem, because I don't necessarily agree with that myself.
Well, Baba Fuller, let me jump in and just remind people that you have written an extremely important book, the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and/or action for victims of racism (white supremacy), and they can pick that up at your site. And then you've worked with Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, who will be celebrated at the Willie Williams Church in Southeast. And then there's also Yoruga by Mama Marimba Ani, and none of these folks are cited in Nell Evan Painter's work. I want to just remind folks, whenever you hear these authors talking about whiteness, ask them if they're citing Fuller, Ani, and Welsing. We got another caller on the line with us.
And if I can, I'm sorry to interrupt the caller here, just real quick. I just want to remind people again at mixwhatilike.org, since this issue of rule of law was brought up, that they could find what I think is a really powerful talk given by Laura Nader in 2008. The sister of Ralph Nader, who I think is far more interesting and complicated in her work, but she was talking about her work with Ugo Matai about international establishment of law as colonial rule. And once you establish the rule of law, then in the context of what Neely Fuller is saying, white supremacy is made legal and encouraged even. But yes, caller, welcome to the air. WPFW. Compulsory, exactly.
You have to vote for white supremacy.
Okay, exactly.
You see how that people are hanging up and hating.
They hung up. They
call back or fall back.
Call or fall back, whichever it's up to you.
No, but this is a really important piece though, because there is a compulsion in the work that you see from these white supremacists.
Yes.
Like they are earning their Cub Scout badges by going out and engaging these acts of terror.
That's right.
And terror is really the patriotic way. So I'm shocked that the president wouldn't describe this as an act of terrorism. If this act resulted in more deaths than the Boston Marathon bombing,
right, and
that was terrorism,
right,
then please call it what it is.
Well, but again, obviously, the association of terror and terrorism is
how you join
racialized. Huh?
Is there association of terror and terrorism? Is that what every white citizen in this country gets born into? Welcome to your membership. You are now a deputy.
May Alexander Pushkin
yes, please.
For 1 second
yes.
and ask Professor Fuller, if he's still around, what he thinks we can do about this issue and about this issue of white supremacy. How do we deal with it? Most people break into two camps, right? The violent approach where maybe we should arm ourselves even in our own churches and shoot back, when somebody like that walks in.
That's definitely part of the conversation, yeah.
Or do we pray and try to reason with them, because that doesn't seem to be working? What do we do?
We do a number of things, and I have made a number of things, suggested a great number of things in the book, textbook, workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of white supremacy. That's why I wrote my book, because I was getting tired of asking questions and not getting answers about what to do, just what you're talking about now. So since I couldn't find books that told me anything about what to do, I had books on every kind of analysis you could think of. I mean, people were analyzing this and analyzing that, but that was very important. People writing novels like Richard Wright's books. I read them and all like that. But I couldn't find very many books that told me, or really any book, that would tell me specifically what to do on a day-by-day basis as a victim of racism. What do I do in the area of economics? What do I do in the area of education? What do I do in the area of entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war? You have to cover all those areas, and you have to have something specific to do. So I came up with what I call a code book, because the white supremacists have a code. They're very exact in what they do. This is why they are successful. They are not sloppy at all. They are precision artists when it comes to practicing white supremacy. They're the most sophisticated people on this planet when it comes to doing what they do. So black people just run around like in circles, and bump into things and fall over things and trip over things and hope that things will work out. And we don't have any kind of plan of any kind. That's addressed to the individual person. What do you do when this happens? What do you do when that happens? And what do you say? And how do you say it? Because there are a lot of things that require you to say things. How do you go about saying things? So I tried to put this in the book that you can get by going to producejustice.com. Now, they won't cover everything because no one has covered everything or even enough things about what to do about racism.
Well, Professor Fuller,
this is why it hasn't been solved.
Professor Fuller, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. We thank you again for coming on at such short notice and doing what you do, laying it out plain and simple and I think quite accurately. We thank you very much again for joining us this morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.